started, and I want to say first of all, thank you, brave people, for coming. I really appreciate it. This is our second meeting to be held in person after coming out of quarantine, and so I know there are a lot of people out there who are still, want to be safe in their own homes, and I certainly understand that. And so we appreciate you watching. We appreciate you having us filming this, so we can still stay connected to all of our members and our potential members. And so we're just going to keep doing this until the world goes back to normal. And I heard yesterday Dr. Fauci said that might be late 2021 before that happens. And so we just can't stop for that long. so we're just going to have to. I appreciate everybody here, being gracious about the wearing the mask and social distancing and all the things that we need to do to keep ourselves safe and keep each other safe. And because whenever that does happen and we do get back to normal, I want to be here for it, and I want you all to be here for it. So we're just going to keep doing that and stay safe, all right? KJ's going to introduce Jodi in a minute, but I wanted to first give a preview of what's coming up in October. Our October 10th meeting, which will be back in the Garden and Arts Center, October 10th. Laura Drake will be here. Laura is from the Permian Basin Bookies group, which is an excellent group for writers. She's going to be presenting hands-on learning experience, sharing her tips for making you a better writer. So stay tuned for that. November 8th, second Saturday in November. Barbara Brannon will be here. Barbara's one of the co-founders of the original Caprock Writers Group. She's in Spur now. She's co-owner of the Texas Spur newspaper, executive director of the Texas Plains Trail region, and she produces a great magazine that's associated with that. And she has a new book that's coming out in November, so she's going to be talking about that. So you want to definitely stay tuned for that. Come for that if you can. Also in November is NaNoWriMo. If any of the local writers are participating in NaNoWriMo, I don't, but I admire those who do. And we have a local group, NaNoWriMo, so look for that on Facebook. Their Facebook group is Lubbock Rhinos. So. And then in December, we're going to vote on officers for the new year. And I haven't talked to KJ about this, but we're going to post what officers we're going to have. So if you're a member of the group and want to be an officer, we would really appreciate your contribution to that. So we're thinking about how you want to be active in the group. So we need you. We appreciate it. And with that, I'll turn it over to KJ.
Hi, I'm KJ Waters. Thank you for coming today. This is such an honor to introduce Jodi Thomas. She's our local writing legend. We love Jodi. So we really appreciate you coming all the way from Amarillo, and you brought Linda Brode. Here's another author. Very successful. Yes, we're excited. We got a bonus author here. So appreciate her coming along too. 2 years ago, I had the honor of working with Jodi for a little while, working on her marketing machine. So I learned a lot from her. She actually, over lunch one day, inspired me to write a whole new series, so I'm really excited to get that going. She spent countless hours helping other authors. This is kind of the thing that she loves, is helping writers learn the craft and reach amazing heights. So we appreciate you doing that for us as well. For those of you who aren't familiar with all of Jodi's accomplishments, I'll give you some of them. She's got millions of books in print. She's both a New York Times and USA Today bestselling author of over 50 novels and countless short story collections. Her stories travel through the past and present days of Texas and draw readers from around the world. In July 2006, Jodi was the 11th writer to be inducted into the Romance Writers of America Hall of Fame, with 5 Ritas to her credit, along with the National Reader's Choice Awards and Booksellers' Best Awards. She's proven her skill as a master storyteller. In 2002, she was honored at Texas Tech University as a distinguished alumni, which is really exciting. And she served as the writer-in-residence at Texas A&M, West Texas, and Canyon. So I'm sure that was very rewarding for you in contact with a lot of authors. When she's not working on a novel or inspiring students to pursue a writing career, she enjoys traveling, renovating historic homes, and checking in on 2 grown sons and 4 grandchildren. We please help me welcome Jodi Thomas.
I am very happy to be here, and I'm surprised that we had this many people come. This is wonderful. But I promised I would come, and they promised we would be safe, so that's good. And to all of you that are watching from home, hello. I'll try to look over there sometimes. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it. When this began, the first thing I said to KJ was, I'll be happy to come anytime you want to. So I'll come back when there's a crowd.
We can actually be a normal.
But I'm going to give you a lot of ideas and sort of and give you an overview. But mostly, I would like to have a conversation with you. So if you have questions of any kind, please ask. So feel free to ask. And I'm going to have to use my notes so I can see my notes. Okay. The first thing that I feel like you should do if you're going to be a writer, how many of you are going to be writers? Okay. Well, you're already. You're already a writer. Okay. And two new.
I'm just going to read everything.
You're just going to read it. All right. Now you'll understand where I'm coming from sometimes. The first thing a writer needs to do when they start is be honest with themselves. And I find that writing is one of the few professions that you can never do and still claim you are. And a lot of people do that. And I see people all the time that say, I want to be a writer, I'm studying to be a writer, I am a writer, and they don't write. If you don't write at least 5 or 6 hours a week, you're not a writer. So don't say you are, because unless you're just looking to pick up little old ladies like me. That's all that goes are writing. The first thing I would tell everybody is do not talk your story. Do not tell me your story. Write your story. And then hand me the manuscript. Right, Linda?
Yes.
Yeah, we
Yes.
definitely believe in that. A writer needs 3 things to be a writer, and one, of course, is talent. One is luck, and the third one is perseverance. If you have perseverance, you only need one of the other 2. If you have perseverance, the luck will come. Eventually, you keep trying, it's going to come. And if you have perseverance, whether you have talent or not, you can make it. And if you don't believe that, just flip into Netflix and see all the movies that don't have endings. And I watch several movies, like all of us now. We're all watching a movie a night. And as I watch those movies, I think they couldn't figure out how to end this. They had a great setup, but they couldn't end the book. So they couldn't end the movie. So that makes it hard. And talent for most people, in my years as writer in residence, I probably helped maybe over 100, maybe more than that, people get started writing. In the last year, Linda and I worked with a young man that wanted to write a suspense. And other than bug him to death to put romance in it, we helped him. We helped him get the tools he needed. And I think Linda and I could not have been any more excited than he was whenever he sold into big figures. And we were just going, all right. And even though we had only a small part in that, we gave him direction. And I see that more and more, what beginning writers need is they just need somebody to move them over a foot and point them in the right direction because they're going. There's a lot of games and scandals and well-meaning people that are shortening the career of writers by making it too easy to get published. And I think that happens all the time. It's, oh, why should I wait 5 years and try to sell my book whenever this guy is offering to publish it? And sometimes that's not a good thing. But but the first thing you need is some talent, and I think most people have it. I really think most people could write a book if they really studied and decided to. It's kind of like whatever you want to be, if you're willing to put in the time, you can probably be it. And talent is there, and it needs to be there. But most people treat it like a potted plant. They put it in the closet and wonder why it doesn't grow. And it's not going to grow in the closet. And you got to get it out there. You got to be able to write something terrible and get it published and regret it the rest of the time that you put it out because it wasn't. And I've often heard it said that writing is like prostitution. That first you do it for love, then you do it for a few friends, and then you do it for money. So who knows? Maybe that's true. But the whole secret to writing, I've figured it out. After 50 books, I know it, and I'll tell it to you. A writer writes and writes and writes, and that's what it is. That simple. If you commit to writing an hour a day, you're going to probably sell. If you commit to 3 hours a day, you're probably going to hit the New York Times. And I know Linda writes probably 4 or 5. Would you say you write 4 or 5 a day? You're pretty dedicated.
Sometimes, some years.
But she writes regularly because every time I call her, she's writing. So that's how it starts. That's how we all start. We start by writing. Your first 1,000 pages are not going to be sellable. You probably could self-publish them, but you'll be doing like I did with my first book, wishing I'd put it keep it under the bed and never sell it to anybody. So, but the everyday process is very hard. And I'm sorry the smoke is getting to me today. The hardest thing a writer does every day is sit down and start to work. And I can goof off all morning planning to work. And I hate to tell you this, but answering your email is not writing. And what do? When we sit down, every one of y'all are nodding because all when you sit down to write, what you do is you check your email. I would suggest you check your email at lunch. You will have an hour more to write every day if you do that. So that might be a good idea. And but getting started writing is the hardest thing for me, and I goof off sometimes all morning trying to get to writing. And reading somebody else's stuff doesn't count. Reading what you wrote yesterday doesn't count. And I wish that someone had told me very on to treat it like a job. You know, if I said to a new writer, I'm going to pay you minimum wage for 8 hours a day, and I want you to write. Except for bathroom breaks and lunch, you work 8 hours a day. They'd write a book. They'd write maybe 2 a year. And so it's really, if you're going to be a success in this, you need to develop your life with your writing time. And that's not always easy to do. somebody's trying to get Learn to write fast. People that write 3 sentences a day are probably not going to be writers. They're not probably publishing writers, no matter how good they are. Learn the rules before you start breaking. I had an hour-long conversation yesterday with the lady who's writing a suspense. And whenever this student last year came to Linda and I and wanted to sit in on our critique group, I asked him, he was writing suspense. I said, I don't really get into suspense. Give me 5 movies to watch. And that's what I did. I watched, and it really helped. It really helped. So I asked the lady who is writing, she's already written 3 suspense books. I said, who do you read? She said, I really don't read suspense. Now, if you don't read suspense, how do you know what it is? So if you're going to write suspense, if you're going to write romance, read a few and read the best. Read the best in the business. And never think you're good enough. The day I was put in by surprise that I won my 3rd Rita, and they put me automatically into the Hall of Fame for romance writers. That morning, I had bought over $150 worth of books on how to write. So you keep reading, you keep studying. Study the market, and don't be that sucker born every minute. Be ready to go. You want to be the best you can. You want to try to, each book, be the best you can. And every time I have a book come out, I have at least one person who writes Amazon and says, I know Jodi Thomas didn't write this book, because it's not, I don't know. Somebody hates it somewhere every time, and that's the way it is. Learn to take critique. If you, for those of you who are writing, I always suggest a critique group, even if it's online, or even if it's, just a group of women that live in your town and read romance. They can probably critique just about as good as anybody. Usually they need writers to help you too with the critique. But take critique. A friend of mine is an artist, and her dad was an artist, and he said the day you stop taking critique is the day you are as good as you're ever going to be. And I think that's true. And so most writers I know still take critique. And I do, and it's hard. You may not need to do it every week. You may just need to get together quarterly or something and do it. Sometimes people think that writers are running away from life, and I don't think that's true at all. I think writers are very much running to life. And I'm in a great change in my life right now. Like a lot of women my age, I've become a widow. And that's been something new to me, and I'm having to grow. I'm having to learn. And it's been very interesting. I think people say, this is a terrible time. And I'm lucky because I can say, hey, I lived through the 60s on the Tech campus. It was a terrible campus.
I bet you have stories.
Yeah. And I was in New Jersey when they burned pretty much Freehold, New Jersey. So I don't know. I don't see this as a terrible time. I just see it as a time we will live through, or some of us won't. I don't, I have a new philosophy of life. You either live through it or you don't. But it is going to rain sometimes. You are going to fall. As a writer, you're going to tumble again and again, thousands of times the longer you stay in the business. After 32 years in the business, I say I have been dead at this game so many times I've worn out the funeral dress. So, over and over, the very editor that told me 30 years ago that my 5th book was terrible and did not do well, and this was the end of, I'd probably peaked, and that's all this was going to be my last book, is now my editor and my agent. She still edits my books, and she still is my agent. So T.S. Eliot said something once that I like to quote. Only those who go too far can possibly find out how far they can go. So sometimes you may go too far, but you gotta go as far as you can with everything. So the first thing I think when you think of writing, when you think of books, for me, I think of the characters. And I do not call my characters characters. I call them my people, because they come alive to me. In fact, my sons are really afraid I'm going to name one in the will, so you may have a good Now, to work, I think you have to understand people. And people ask me sometimes, do you use your degrees? I use my degrees all the time. I am a certified marriage and family counselor. I hated marriage counseling. I did it for 3 months. I hate it. People come in and yell at each other. I didn't like that at all. And I ended up going into crisis counseling and grief counseling, and really loved that, because you were helping someone get over a hill and then go back to normal. And it was really nice. But I learned a lot about people, and I think that helped me with characters. There's a rule that I've always followed with characters, and that is heroes have weaknesses and villains have reasons. And when you write a villain in your book, you have to remember he thinks he's the hero of the story. Nobody told him he was the villain. So he doesn't think, oh, I'm the bad guy, I'm going to do this. He thinks, I'm going to do this, and everybody's going to deal with it. They're going to handle it. So remember that. And also, Dusty Richards, who's one of my favorite writers and friends over the years, he used to always say that when you start a book, tell the reader what the main character wants to achieve. Their goal, their dream, their thing that they have to have. Then the reader will cheer for them through the whole book so that they will get it. I think that's true too. And sometimes we have to be hungry, and our characters have to be hungry for life. And don't forget to put that in. And I always think when you get to talking about characters, people start a book and sometimes they wander off on rabbit trails or whatever. And I always think you need to think of a plot, and your characters are riding on a train and they are moving the whole time. And every once in a while, you're watching the train go by as you're reading the book, and there's a rabbit on the train. It doesn't have any purpose there, it's just sitting there. And that's okay. You learned how to make soap, and you're going to put it in that book, even though nobody cares. And or you learned this fact about history, and you're going to put it in. So that's fine. But you don't want to have a train of rabbits. That wouldn't make sense. So plotting needs to go on whether the rabbits are there. And I heard a mystery writer say once, he charted his book out, and he put it on the wall around his room as he charted it. And he said, I figured out that every 25 pages, the reader spends a quarter. So I've got to give them their quarter's worth on that 25 pages. And so maybe you should think about that. Sometimes I really, over the years, have thought about it, and I'm not sure I ever decided to write. I think it's more like an illness that came over me, and I just can't get over it. But I'm not sure. And now, one thing that I would tell all writers, and since a lot of them are listening to us today, I would tell them that one of the things that you need to think about is you're going to fall off the ladder of success several times. And you're going to take big falls if you stay in the game. And so you need to think about how to fall. Early in your career, when the fall is a rejection that comes in, or a person in your critique group that really makes you cry. I've done that several times. And not me, but I've cried. And there's a lot of things. You need to develop a strategy of when you fall. If you dedicate one little space in your cabinet for whatever you need when you fall. Maybe ice cream, it may be chocolate, it may be wine. Don't get stuck on that too, but whatever you need, so that cheers you up when you fall. And everybody needs that. So it could be a person that you can call and say, let's go do something, and that helps with it. And the second thing I would tell you when falling happens, be careful of people that drain you. You know, you can always find a writer who says, oh yeah, it's impossible to make it. Every writer I've ever seen that says, this market's too hard, it's all run by crooks, it's impossible to make it. Everybody that says that is negative. You can bet. Just walk up to them and ask them, how many hours did you write this week? And they didn't. They're too busy making up reasons that they didn't make it. Because the people that are writing make it. You know, and I believe this in life. If you want something and you work toward it, you're going to get it. And then you got to deal with it. So sometimes you're going to get, you get what you want. And you should put what you want out. I've been saying for 10 years, I want a movie. I want a movie. I don't have it yet, but I'm going to have it. I know it because I keep saying I want a movie. And think about killing the people off in your book that give you negative feedback. Just do that. One thing that I learned a long time ago, and I keep coming back to this because it's really true. The people that work at writing become writers. The people that don't work at writing don't become writers. It's that simple. I think one of the strongest things that made me work early on was my cousin. I have a cousin, I think he has his doctorate in English, and he teaches at a little college. So I come from a big family, and we were at hospice. You know how the big family gathers around. There's 50 of us wandering the hall waiting, you know. And so I'm wandering over, and I look over at my cousin Kenny. And he's either always reading a book or ignoring most of the people because he's more intelligent, of course, than all of his relatives. And so, but I look over there, and Kenny has a stopwatch on. So, you know, I think, this is going to be interesting. So I go up to Kenny, and I say, Kenny, why do you have a stopwatch on? And he says, you know, I teach classic guitar besides teaching at the college. I didn't know that, but I thought that was interesting. And he said, and I tell my students, practice, practice, practice. And they never do, and I can tell they're not practicing. So I bought them all stopwatches. And I said, how many hours do you practice a week? And they were all saying 7 hours, 10 hours, whatever. I said, click this on when you start. If you get up to go to the bathroom, click it off, and don't click it back on until you pick up your guitar. And let's see how many. And none of them practiced near as much as they thought they did. So he decided he would do that because he was practicing 10 hours a week. And he clicked it on and he clicked it off, and he was wearing it a week. And he was practicing 2 hours and 15 minutes. So I think writers do that too. We do that really bad. And one of my classes that I took, I bought everybody a cheap clock. And click it on, click it off. Now you can do it on your phone and see how long you're writing. If you're writing 5 hours one week, try to write 6 hours the next week. You know, most of us spend more time getting ready to write than we do writing anyway. So, there's a few things about writing that I think are really interesting that writers have said. The first one was Susan Phillips said, writing is hard for everybody but fools. Email is an illusion of writing. You're not writing. Measure out your creativity and measure out your life. And cut people and things out of life not needed. That does not include your spouse or your children. For some of us, we're not running away from writing, we're running toward it. If you love to do something, there will be a point you hate to do it. Anybody reach that point? Or one day you just hate writing, you don't want to do it. It's going to rain, you're going to fall, not once, but 1,000 times. You know, people say I'm lucky. I've got 50 books in print. I'm in every format. I've sold millions of books. Once in a while someone calls me a legend, and that is, you know, I think I was still trying to get there when people started calling me that. That kind of scares me. But people say I'm lucky, and it must have been easy for me. That's not true. I just didn't give up. It wasn't easy, and most people didn't see me fall. And sometimes whenever it was going bad, I would play that old song, Bring on the Rain, I'm thirsty anyway. Of course, well, I listen to country music, so I like that. And think about what you want as a writer, because you're going to get what you want. You're going to get what you want. And if you write. So I'm going to open it up the last few minutes. And do you have any questions about what it's like to live the life of a writer? I am right now writing my first nonfiction one morning a week, and it's going to be on rare air, because I believe writers develop in rare air. And it's a book on how to live a life as a writer. So, do you have any questions?
You said something about, you recently widowed, and I'm sorry for your loss, because I know that's income loss, I think is difficult. Did you, I know I'm married right now, and I always use my husband as my excuse not to write.
Oh, yes.
Or he's interrupting me, or he needs break time. I always take a break away from what I'm doing to break with him so that we can visit and talk. And, you know,
Oh, yeah.
I say, well, that's the reason why I'm not getting this. But I know that's not because when he's gone on a weekend to a race, I don't get any writing done either. But I'm wondering if you're finding.
I actually, I stopped writing for about 6 months. And then I made myself go back. And it took a while. And I think, Linda, you took a couple of years off writing when you were with Ward. Yeah. So sometimes, for me, the writing was a healing process. Yeah. But, we all have plenty of excuses why. Some people say their dog keeps them from writing because they're just as they're getting ready, you know. My phone keeps me from writing. If the third time I get a phone call that when I'm writing, it's like gone. I can't go back. And then if you put your phone in the kitchen and where you can't hear it, people go, "You didn't answer me." Well, when did we have to answer the phone? I don't know. But you're right. There are a lot of excuses. I remember any excuse that my kids came in when they were little, that was more important than my writing. And one day I said to myself, how are they going to feel when I fail? When I don't write because I raised them. Surely I can raise them and write. And my boys are very proud of me, and they have never said, "Mom, we wish you'd gotten up." You know, they laugh and say the things that happen. Like I would write in the summer, and we built onto the house, and was a little bitty room, and so we didn't put air conditioner or heating in it. So all summer when they were home running around, if the doorbell rang, they started yelling, "Put your pants on, Mom!" Because it was too hot in that little room to wear pants. And they laugh about the things that happened, but they did not feel cheated. And they've had a lot of fun talking about growing up with a writer. So I don't think I neglected them, but I taught them how to work on your goal. But it is hard, especially with an ailing husband. But my husband was proud of me. He had a lot more fun playing the game than I did. I didn't like the game. I didn't really keep up with, how many the sales were and all that, but he liked playing that game. Yeah. And like most husbands, he did not read everything I wrote. And that was fine. Yeah. Because I didn't want to hear all about his job either. So we didn't we talked about both, but we didn't, he did not get involved in the decision making, but he went with me a lot. And people would say, well, Tom's not with you, but like at RWA. Well, I've won 5 Ritas, and every time Tom was at the back of the room watching. Yeah, but he wouldn't. He was too shy to come up. Yeah. The reason I brought this today, my bag. One of my students years ago, she quilted, and she was really one of the influences of me writing so many things about quilting. And she quilted, and after she'd finished my class, she went back to California, and she decided to say thank you. She was going to quilt me a quilt. And so she started it, and her husband came in and said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "I'm making Jodi a quilt to say thank you for teaching me to write." And he said, "Don't you think she'd like it better if you wrote a book?" So Celia Bonaducci has written 8 books now, and she turned the one square she made into a bag. So I love that bag. This is is my new book. I think it's my 51st or 2nd. I can't really keep up with them. And a few of them have been changing names, and sometimes they take short stories and put them in a book, and it's a new book, and it's not a book, it's a short story, so I don't remember. Yeah.
That book is still on BookScan.
It is?
Yes, you're still on there
Yeah.
since May.
Yeah, that's great. That's good. Yeah. Any questions you have?
I have a question for you. I heard you speak a couple of years ago, and you had mentioned about how long you had been writing under contract. So you already have sold the book basically before you've written the book or before you finished the book, and so I'm just kind of curious as to how you think that's affected. Like, do you ever get done with the book and it's already sold, and then you think, I wish I'd have done this instead? Or are you always thinking of, your mind's always on the next book?
It's kind of hard when you write under contract. I wrote the first couple of books, and tried to sell them, and I think I had 3 finished by the time I sold. I sold my first book in '88, and since then, every book was written on. I would write the proposal and then write it, except whenever I wanted to switch from historical romance to mainstream fiction, and I wrote The Widows of Wichita County. And when I wrote that, I had to write the whole book to show them I could write women's fiction. And then when I sold it, I sold 3 books, 2 that weren't. And so in my mind right now, yesterday I sold a short story that will be due in March of 21. And I don't even know what it's about. I wrote a 1-page deal, and I probably won't follow it. I am working on a book. I'm doing edits on a book, and I've already turned in the proposal of the next book, and I'm working on a nonfiction. Now, it's kind of like changing channels on the TV. You don't get Jeopardy mixed up with, with Kardashians. They're different stories, so it goes pretty easy. And sometimes I get tired of working on one. There are disadvantages to writing under contract. The advantage is, you're getting paid. That's good. The disadvantage is you can't be quite as creative because you've already turned in a synopsis. So, but sometimes I don't follow it, and at all, at all, and it works out. But now that I don't have any interruptions and we're all locked in our houses, I'm getting a lot of work done. Something else that helps me is building the nest. I have different nests for different books. When I start a short story, I work on it in a different place than I'm working on them, and that helps. And the other day that my son came in, and we had a room we call the nothing room because we don't know what it is, and I put a desk in it. And my son said, "Mother, you're turning every room in this house into an office." I have four places I write. But I can do that because nobody's home now, so they can.
Yes. Can you talk about some of your early rejections? You talk about falling down so many times. Give us an example of maybe before you kind of had contracts and stuff. Some of the earlier stumbles.
Nobody gave. One time, an interviewer said, "Your English teachers must have loved you." I never had an English teacher say anything. I had it. My first agent would not send any of my books off because she didn't think they were good enough. And the reason she didn't think good enough is because I can't spell. I can't spell, I honestly, right, Lynn? I honestly cannot
That's the
spell.
truth.
And I thought, whenever spell check came along, this was my chance. I can spell now. No, didn't work. The first book that I had spell check everything, there was a place in there where the Apaches massacred a wagon train, they thought. And it came out, the Apaches manicured. That was on Berkeley Small for years. And I thought that was hilarious. And I make a lot of mistakes like that. But my editor thought, my agent thought that I couldn't spell, and grammar's not too good either, so they couldn't. And one time I asked, my editor now was the editor-in-chief at Random House, and I asked her one time, I am sorry I can't spell. I do the best I can. I have people read it, but some words get by. And she said, Jodi, if I could write, she said I would be. I can spell, so I can take care of that. So she takes care of the spelling. I work on it and I try, but I'm not any good. But I think that stopped me for a while. I remember thinking when I started writing and I took my first course, I'd be published in a year. And 5 years later, I was still thinking that. As I said, my fifth book was about World War I, and it was too early for it to be a historical, and nobody liked it, and the cover looked like a hamburger, and it was real bad, and they said this would be my last book, but they were contracted for 2 books, so we're going to go ahead and honor the contract, and this next book we're on Best Book of the Year, so I stayed in. They told me I could not write women's fiction, and my editor really tried to discourage me with Widows of Wichita County, and it won a lot of awards. So I went on, and so on and so on. One time I wrote a great book. I thought it was great. It started at Goliad. This was in my historical days, and they turned it down because I painted the Mexicans in a bad light. Of course, they did massacre everybody. But, I didn't mean to do that, so I guess. But it's interesting, about the time you think you're going great, then somebody will come up and say something, and it hurts. But it doesn't anymore. It doesn't hurt anymore. But used to. I was very sensitive to it. Best compliment I ever got was one of the first ones. When I wrote my first book, I took it over to my mother and I said, I'm writing this under a pen name, Mom. If you don't want to tell anybody, it's okay. It's got some hot places in it. And Mom read it and she said, it was the best book. It was wonderful. You have enough sex in it for 3 or 4 books, so leave it out of the next one. But she said, I just loved it. And she said, can I take it to Pearl? And her and Pearl, they always traded books. And so she took it to Sunday school and gave it to Pearl. And that night, Pearl didn't show up for training union. Good Baptists show up for training union. And she didn't show up, and Mom got real worried, and so she went over to see if Pearl was all right. And Pearl said, tell Jodi that I got hotter in that scene, that waterfall scene, than I ever got with either one of my husbands. best thing I ever got. But it's good and bad. You got to trust in yourself. Yeah. But people still, if they find a mistake, call me or write me, and I love that. And I write them a thank you card. Thank you for finding that mistake. I appreciate it. And I usually send them a gift. And there's going to be a big one coming up in the next book because I changed the characters' names, didn't tell the art department, and so the people on the back are not my characters anymore. But anybody that finds that mistake is going to get a gift.
If we have time, you have the story about perseverance, the contests, and I've heard the story a couple of times, and it just gets me every time. And I've thought about that story so many times since the first time I've heard it. And so I would love for, it's a story of perseverance for everyone.
Well, okay, and I think this changed my life. There are days in my life whenever I wake up and realize this day changed my life. And this was when I've been writing for about 5 years. I'd taken every writing course I could. I had read every book in the library on writing. I'd bought as many as I could. And I'd been writing for 5 years, and I thought I was hot stuff. And we had a local contest in Amarillo, and it was just local. And you could, for $25, you could enter as many spots as you wanted to enter. So I entered all 8 of the contests. I wrote the first chapter of a mystery, a romance, a western. I wrote a poem. I wrote a short story. So I entered it, all 8. And I've been working and working and working. And all of the home ec teachers where I was teaching all love my books, so I was great. And I told everybody, I'm going to win so many of these that they're going to say, Jodi, just stay up here at the podium. You don't even have to go sit down. And I was just sure I was going to win. Well, I couldn't afford to go to the conference, so I just went to the luncheon. And I sat in the back with some guy who had driven some people in from Border, and he could have cared less. And I told him, I have entered every one of these, and I am going to win. And I may only get honorable mention or 5th place, but I'm going to win some of them. And they started calling names, and the first one had 7 entries, and they gave a 1st, 2nd, 3rd place, and 3 honorable mentions, and didn't call my name. And as I listened again and again, they never called my name. And finally, I realized I didn't win it. I've been working 5 years. I've been reading. I've been taking classes. And I got up and left. And by the time I hit the car, I was crying. And I started driving home, and I didn't want my sons to see me crying. And so I pulled off at Llano Cemetery. And Llano Cemetery in Amarillo is the only place there's trees. It's easy to find. And I pulled off, and I sat in the car for a while, and then I got out and walked around. And I thought, this is it. This is my one thing I really thought I'd be good at. And I'm not. If I can't win a local contest, not even an honorable mention, I don't belong in this game. And I walked by the Barfield graves, and that's a whole different story because I like the Barfield graves. But beside their graves was this square, concrete square, and then on top of it was a iron bowl of fruit, which makes no sense. And I heard later the Barfield, one of them got drunk in New Orleans and just bought it and didn't know what to do with it, so he put it in the cemetery. So I'll go up there, and I'm sitting down on the concrete square there, and I'm thinking, I don't know what I want to do with my life, because I can't. This was it. This was what I really wanted to do. And I looked down, and somebody on the concrete had chiseled out through. And I thought, that makes no sense. Why would you put through in a cemetery? And so I got down and pulled weeds out around it and looked at it. And there was one word on each side of that square. And it was, triumph comes through perseverance. And I stood up and I said, that is it, God. I am going to write the rest of my life. Somebody's going to have to pull the pen from my hand to get it in the casket because I'm not quitting. That is it. I'm never quitting. And 3 months later, I met an agent. 5 months later, I had sold 5 books. One of the books that did not place even honorable mention in the local contest, a year later, or might have been 2, won Best Book of the Year for RWA, Romance Writers of America. And that started me on a quest. And most of the things that happen because you laid the groundwork a long time ago. And then all of a sudden, it starts blooming. And you never know when it's going to. I work all summer in my garden. I plant stuff. My favorite thing to do is pull up the dead one and push the other one back into where it looks okay. I do that all summer. I back out of the garage yesterday, and there is a tree growing in the crack in my garage. Inside the garage, there's no sun there, and the tree is about this high, and I didn't see it because it's on the other side of the car. So I think sometimes the surprises are that. And I think you plant the seed sometimes when you don't know it. But I don't know, I remember the first time I got a check over $1,000, and I thought they made a mistake. They put an extra 0 and they shouldn't have. So it's been a fun career. I have loved everything about it. I've cried a lot, and I've gotten mad. And everybody in my entire life that has ever said anything mean to me, including the girl on the bus when I was 13 who told me I walked like a duck, I killed. So I kill I run out of people to kill. Somebody said, you don't have very many bad guys in your book. I don't. I think people are good. I think people are good. And I like love stories.
I love your sign that you saw at KU.
Whoops. That's me. Okay.
The sign that as you were walking out in disappointment, and if you just saw the word through, you could have said, well, I'm supposed to be through with this,
That's right.
And walked all the way around and saw the entire message.
I have never thought of that, but you're right.
This was meant for me, and I love signs like that. I come across things in my life that will give me a strong message, especially in books, more so than anywhere else. And I just wonder if you put those kinds of signs for characters in your books that give them a guidance somehow. I know Jean Auld did in all of her books. There were signs. It was if she picked up a piece of quartz, it meant something to her, And I just wonder if you find ways to put signs in the book for people.
Oh yeah, I think after my husband died, I was sitting in my office and I had this stuffed animal that's a horse that I'd bought years ago. And it had it, and I knew it played something, but I went over there and I pushed it, and it started moving. The horse started galloping, and it's playing the song "Back in the Saddle Again." And I thought, I want to get back in the saddle again. And so, yeah, I think it. I don't know if they're there all the time, and you just find them when you need them. Yeah. So, but I plan on writing till I die. Any other questions?
I do.
Yes. Uh-oh.
Okay. How do you deal with doubts? Doubts are very prevalent in my life. And I reach like the 3/4 of the book, and one day I just cringe and say, oh, it's the worst thing I've ever written. I want to throw it away and start over. That always happens.
Oh, yeah. My first 3 drafts are terrible. They're terrible. And then the 4th or the 5th draft, when I'm going through it, the magic happens. And I think it's because I get to know my people. I know my people and it takes over, yeah. But, oh yeah. And I've discovered something. When I'm writing and I look down and say, this is crap.
I know.
This is terrible.
Yeah.
A week later, I go back so I can erase that crap and get rid of it and write something good, and I can't find it. So, maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. But
Yeah.
sometimes you have to write your way out of the hole. You
Just keep writing, yeah.
Yeah, just keep writing.
Yeah. Take your lumps.
Yeah.
If it is.
Well, thank you. I wanted to give you this. I give this out at all my signings and everything because people are reading my whole body of work, and that really tickles me. And they'll write, and they'll say, I figured out you didn't write this one because it doesn't sound like the others. Well, yeah, it is. So I put very few real people in it. In Twisted Creek, I put my mother going into Alzheimer's in it. And Twisted Creek is probably my favorite book. So everybody always says that. What's your favorite book? That's it. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. And happy writing.